Welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel, and this is Parashat Ki Tisa. So you shall carry. Exodus 30:11 to 34:35. This one's called The Devil Within. This is by far the most difficult study and teaching that I've had to do and to give. This week, on Monday night to Wednesday afternoon, depending where you are in Israel, in and out of Jerusalem, we will be celebrating the festival of Purim, Chag Purim, the time when the world got flipped on its head. More specifically, the time when everything bad became good, when everything unholy became holy, when death became life. Now, I don't mean turned into, I mean in place of. And I'll touch on Purim a bit later. In fact, I was going to give this teaching in full garb and full costume, but I decided against it 2 days ago. The reason is that this is a tough teaching. It's because this time I'll be speaking of the sin of the golden calf. Now, I've mentioned it before here and there in past teachings, but I never really delved into it. It was such a point of shame for me and heartbreak to read these things. It's a stain on our people. Now, I'm sure we've heard so many different commentaries about this before. I know for a fact that the nations, they just love this as part of their ammunition against the Jewish people. Look what you did, and all that good stuff. Pointing fingers, puffing themselves up, speaking in holier than thou tones and terms. This has been a stain on our record, and this is true, and in fact, we have many stains. But I got to thinking, God forgave us. There was a cost, of course. There's always a cost. There's always a toll to pay for sin, but that does not remove God's forgiveness. Even when David sinned with Bathsheba, he repented, and Nathan said immediately that God had already forgiven him, yet he would still have to suffer for his deeds. One does not cancel out the other, as he did for the remainder of his days because of that. David, before and after he was king, seldom knew peace in his life. He was always being chased, if you've noticed, even though, despite all the wonderful things that he's done. But did that mean that God cast him aside? Absolutely not. 2 Samuel 7, when your days are finished and you shall lie with your forefathers, then I will raise up your seed that shall proceed from your body after you. Some of you asked me about the lineage of Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef. God is telling him the actual seed from your body. God is emphasizing the point that there's a physical aspect. And I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. So this in the real time means Solomon, the literal seed from David's body, but his kingdom forever, we're talking about Mashiach ben David, from the lineage of. So that also has yet to come. It's a prophecy that would happen right after and then further down. I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son, so that when he goes astray, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the stripes of the sons of Adam. Will God chasten the Mashiach? No. Who will he chasten? Israel, right? My son, when he goes astray, because Israel will go astray. This is what God is telling David. But my mercy shall not depart from him, as I withdrew from Saul, who I removed from before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be confirmed forever before you. Your throne shall be established forever. According to all these words and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak to David. Now, these are things that are absolutely undeniable. Anyone could read this in the Bible because they're written very, very clearly. Now, do you think that there's a difference between David and Judah or Judah and Israel? It says nowhere that God left his people. Nowhere. Angry? Sure. Heartbroken? Yeah. Sent them away? Of course. We know this. But always brings them back. Here we are. To cut himself off from his people, from his firstborn son Israel, is like cutting himself off from himself. These are impossibilities. Only we can do that, not him. You don't do that. You understand? A debt must always be paid. This is the law. This is God's law. It's black and it's white. There's no two ways about it. But what kind of payment that is owed is somewhat of a gray area, meaning that it is the law, but each verdict is according to its case. Each case is different. As we discussed over the last 3 weeks in Deuteronomy, that God gave authority to the judges to judge Israel according to how they see fit. God gave man the authority to judge according to God's Torah. These are the rabbinical courts, the seat of Moses, who break down the law to the oral law and judge to the best of their God-given ability and authority. But then, as we discussed last week, we have Messiah ben David, who will judge every single person individually by his smell. And what will he be smelling? The soul, the purest aspect of our being, which is purely of God. And through this, he will be able to decipher how the person got to the point of where they are and everything else along the way. In other words, by smelling you, he will know every last detail of your entire life, as well as the depths of your soul. And the soul starts off with God. And then afterwards, God's like, hey, you're going to be born. And the soul doesn't want to come down. He's hanging out with God. Why would he want to come down into this world? But he's like, all right, fine. And then there's conception. First there's a thought, 40 days, and then 40 days before conception, and then there's conception, and here we are. And our soul is now in our body, yet it's not in our body. It's up there, yet our body is here. Again, nefesh, ruach, neshama, it's attached. Such mercies that are given to us. This is hard for us to even begin to comprehend, but just as we believe God on all things, this too is part of his word. That being said, let's try and go as deep as we can, as we are allowed to go. I'm not sharing everything with you here, as you know, but I'm sharing whatever I can. Within the limited time frame, of course, the limits of the hearer's comprehension and the limits of the teacher's ability to impart said information. Because we all pray for God to bestow understanding to us in all things, especially when it comes to the Torah. And even more so when it comes to thinking bad thoughts about his people, who he calls his firstborn son. There's going to be a lot of reading and different perspectives here, so please be patient. So let us pray right now for discernment on this highly sensitive topic, and may Hashem guide my words to the ears and hearts of those that they belong to. In the end of chapter 31, the last thing that God tells Moses is that the Shabbat will be an everlasting covenant between him and the children of Israel. In fact, those very verses is what we read on the Kiddush of Shabbat day, when we bless the wine before the meal. And then we have the very last verse, chapter 31, verse 18. When he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the testimony, stone tablets written with the finger of God. ויתן אל משה ככלותו לדבר איתו בהר סיני שני לוחות העדות, לוחות האבן כתובים באצבע אלוהים, finger of God. Now the Hebrew word ככלותו, as translated here, means finished or concluded, completed, as we could see in Genesis 2:1. Vayechulu hashamayim v'aretz v'chol tzavam. Now the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts, which happens to be, doesn't happen to be. This is the Kiddush we say on Friday night of blessing of the wine. So again, this is no coincidence either. So here in 31:18, the word kechaloto is missing the letter vav in the middle, which actually spells, without the punctuation, which is not in the Torah, kechalato, literally meaning his bride. Kala is bride. So if I literally translate this from Hebrew to English, as it's exactly written in the Torah, it would read, and he gave to Moses for his bride, when he concluded speaking with him on Mount Sinai, 2 tablets of the testimony, stone tablets, written with the finger of God. When a man and woman are joined in marriage, the husband is required to give the wife a ketubah, which is a beautiful written document stating their union, the terms and conditions, what the husband is basically giving to the wife. In modern day, this would also, in modern day weddings, they give a ring. It's like a sign of unity, commitment, matrimony, and so on. And who is in charge of carrying or guarding this up until the time it is to be given? Who is actually the deliverer of these things? This is the best man, of course. And who, pray tell, is a better man than Moshe Rabbeinu, who quite literally is the best man? And his job was to take the gift from the groom, God, and present it before the bride, Israel. Now, another hint here is brought to us by Rashi, who discusses that a bride adorns herself with 24 decorative pieces at her wedding. Now, this can be found within the hints from Isaiah chapter 3. You will not find it there in English, and you actually have to study the Hebrew and to understand that these are the secrets of the 24. So also, the bride, in modern day, today, the bride has 24 halachot, commands, statutes, by which she must learn and abide by before she is to be married. So too the Torah, as we know, consists of 24 books, as we discussed last week. So the Torah was and is currently our ketubah. 24 books, no less and no more. The Torah is what every Jew is called to adorn themselves with, because we were waiting for that unity. So the groom, God, will indeed recognize his bride, us. Now we come to chapter 32, Lamed Bet. So let's read the first part. When the people saw that Moses was late in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron, and they said to him, "Come on, make us gods that will go before us, because this man Moses, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Remove the golden earrings that are on your ears on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them those earrings to me." And all the people stripped themselves of the golden earrings that were on their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took them from their hands, fashioned it with an engraved tool, and made it into a molten calf, upon which they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who have brought you up from the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of it. And Aaron proclaimed and said, "Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord." On the next day they arose early, offered up burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink, and they got up to make merry. What in the world just happened? Did we not read but a few weeks ago, and all the people saw the voices and the torches and the sound of the shofar and the smoking mountain, and the people saw and trembled, so they stood from afar, and they said to Moses, "You speak to us and we will hear, but let God not speak with us lest we die." But Moses said to the people, "Fear not, for God has come in order to exalt you, and in order that his awe shine upon your faces, shall be upon your faces, so that you shall not sin." The people remained far off, but Moses drew near to the opaque darkness where God was. The Lord said to Moses, "So shall you say to the children of Israel, you have seen that from the heavens I have spoke to you. You shall not make images of anything that is with me. Gods of silver or gold, or gods of gold, you shall not make for yourselves." Right? We didn't miss that. How could they miss that? And they were there. So how could this possibly be? I mean, come on, people. Did they forget? Even though they were scared and they thought that Moses delayed, how can you unsee what you have seen or unhear what you have heard? That doesn't make any sense to us. Not to me, anyway. Maybe not to you either. They have witnessed the 10 plagues in Egypt, where God did whatever he wanted with all his creation. They witnessed the destruction of the most powerful and advanced empire in the world at the time. They witnessed, these are witnesses, they witnessed the splitting of the sea with their enemies lying dead upon the shore. They witnessed a victory although be it temporary, over the bloodthirsty Amalek. Amalek is a great-grandson of Esau, Edom. They witnessed God's presence upon Mount Sinai. They saw, they felt, they heard the voice of God speaking directly to them. How could they? Grab your scuba gear. We're going deep. Come and see. When the people saw that Moses was late in coming down from the mountain, Vayera ha'am ki boshesh Moshe laredet minahar. That's what the Hebrew says. Who are the people? We discussed this a little while ago. These people are the mixed multitude. Who are the mixed multitude? These are the same mixed multitude who left Egypt with Israel back in Exodus 12:38. And also a great mixed multitude went up with them, and flocks and cattle, very much livestock. V'gam erev rav ala itam v'tzon u'bakar mikne kaved mod. Notice how it places them in the same verse as the animals. If it were only Egyptians, it would have said so, and many Egyptians left with them. But it did not mention just a single nation. There were many nations who came to Egypt because of its wealth and prosperity. That's how we know that even from among the nations there were different aspects of people, because it did not only name the nations, because it would have. Mainly sorcerers and conjurers. Then Pharaoh too summoned the wise men and the magicians and the necromancers of Egypt also did likewise with their magic. This is when Moses and Aaron approached Pharaoh with the staff, right? Those guys. And it's from that very moment that they wanted to come against God. But when they saw when they saw what he did in Egypt, they went with him. They followed Moses. In fact, Moses even interceded on their behalf early on, a few weeks ago, when we discussed that God referred to them as the people. We discussed this. But Moses beseeched God and said that since they saw your mighty deeds, they will want to convert. Let them see your mighty deeds every day, and they will know that there is no God other than you. So God allowed it, because Moses asked. In this instance, Moses' heart for the people cost the lives of many of God's children. Another reason they were called a mixed multitude, or very specifically Erev Rav in Hebrew, is because their leaders were Yanis and Yambres. Do we know these two? We're about to, if you don't know who these two are. They practiced magic from the 6th hour after sunrise. The greater magicians would perform magic at 6.5 hours after sunrise, and then when the sun began to set until 9.5 hours after the sunrise, while the lesser magicians would get into it around 9:30 to midnight. The reason the greater ones practiced their magic from sunrise to sunset, first of all, that was sun worship in the ancient world, as we understand, was because then 995 grades or levels started to float over the mountains of darkness, and their spirit hovered over all these magicians. They were calling in these spirits of darkness. These guys were then able to do whatever they wanted. They became godlike, if you will, but not, they could do whatever they want. Some people say even that Balaam was able to levitate. They turned people into animals and whatnot, all this crazy stuff. And they became the go-to guys for the Egyptians, like, oh, these guys definitely, they're the people to speak to. And this is why they were called Erev Rav, literally translated to a great evening. But wait, there's more. As in Vayehi Erev Vayehi Boker, and it was evening and it was morning, like in Genesis. Now, do we recall how we learned back in the whole book of Genesis, especially from Genesis, from Parashat Bereshit, that God's world was created from chaos into order? God takes chaos and he turns it to order. The word Erev, from evening to morning, from dark to light. The word Erev, evening, comes from the word le'arbev, to stir, to mix, chaos, what's going on. While the word boker, morning, comes from the word levaker, to examine. Because in the evening, in the dark, one cannot see clearly, one cannot see the truth. But while the light shines, one can examine and see the truth. So even though they practiced their magic during the day, they worked with the powers of darkness. And this is why they were referred to as the Erev Rav. Now we know this. But again, it primarily refers to the mixed multitude, all the other nations. I'm just letting you know some secrets over here. Nevertheless, even the rest of the nations, they were all idolaters, and that's why they were Erev Rav. So the reason they were considered so great and so powerful was because they observed how things worked and understood the powers that be. They were students of the world. Balaam himself was very, very powerful. People say that he was, it is an opinion of that he was more powerful than Moses, yet it did him no good. In other words, he understood how the light worked and he understood how the darkness worked. We see that Balaam himself beseeched God to see if Israel is in favor with God. And if not, he went back to Balak saying, hey, there's nothing that I could do. God is protecting them. He knew both sides, while Moses only knew the light side because he didn't even need to know the dark side. It wasn't relevant for him. They would observe the grades of Moses, and they saw that he was surrounded by 6 grades on all sides at all times, so you couldn't touch him. And these are the 6 Sefirot, which we studied. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Okay? There were 6 points all around Moses all the time. Could not touch Moses. He was untouchable. But it was also by these 6 crowns that they knew exactly when he was supposed to descend from the mountain. They knew more so than Israel. They were on a higher level than Israel when it came to observation. Israel's eyes were on God. They observed the world. And that's another reason that it says in the verse, Vayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe. Moses was late, or Moses delayed. Boshesh means beshesh. Shesh is 6 in Hebrew. They waited for this. They waited for this opportunity. They were biding their time and they got their window and they took it. They're mamash, predators. When the people saw that Moses was late in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron. This happened immediately. And the question is asked, why did they insist on going through Aaron? The answer is that they wanted to be included in the right side. We're going deeper right now, so pay attention. The right side comes from the left side. It is the root of the left. From the right side comes the left side. It's the root of the left. For instance, there is chesed, which is mercy, on the right, and gevurah on the left. While Avraham was chesed on the right, Isaac, who came from the right, from Avraham, became gevurah, judgment, on the left. So they wanted in on the right side, but they had to first go through the left side to do so. In this case, it was Aharon who was Hod, glory, on the left, while Moses was Netzach, eternity, on the right, where everyone draws their power from. There are different ways to look at this Sefirot. This is one of them. And what did they very specifically tell Aaron? Aseh lanu Elohim. Vayomu elav kum, aseh lanu Elohim. They said, rise up and make for us Elohim. Now pay attention. Moses never mentioned the name Elohim when he was in Egypt. He only mentioned the 4-letter name of Yud He Vav He, right? God said, this is how you're going to introduce me. And that's why Pharaoh also said, I don't know who this Yud He Vav He is. He wasn't lying. I don't know who he is. I don't recognize him. And there was a very specific reason that Moses did not mention the name Elohim in Egypt. From the 10 Commandments, Lo hiye lecha Elohim acherim al panai. You shall not have other Elohim in my stead. You shall not make for yourself a graven image or any likeness which is in the heavens above, which is on the earth below, or which is in the water beneath the earth. You shall neither prostrate yourself before them, who? Other Elohim, nor worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a zealous God. There were other Elohim in the world. El, we know, El means powerful. Yes, it means God, but its root is Elohut, Eloha. It's powerful. Okay, that's what that means. These are very specifically other deities in the world, but these are the spirits of darkness which all came from the one true God. Again, God created everything. So all throughout, ancient civilizations, they worshiped these powerful beings. There were powerful beings, no doubt. but they were not God. They were just posing as, you understand? And most people actually fell for it. And that's why they said to Aaron, rise up and make for us other gods. Aseh lanu Elohim, for us. They needed to strengthen their side. That was the dark side, because Moses never gave them any power because he never spoke of them. This is also a lesson in the power of speech. When you speak things, you bring things to life. So what else did they say? Asher yelchu lefanenu, which shall go before us. So this is what they said and why they wanted this. We saw that you, the children of Israel, have all that is good and precious in this world, but we are put aside. For you, Hashem went before you. We can see this in Exodus 13, 21, and 22. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to cause it to lead them on the way, and at night in a pillar of fire to give them light. Thus they could travel day and night. He did not move away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire at night from before the peoples. We too want Elohim to go before us, the same way that Yud He Vav He goes before you. Our side has the power to go before us if we summit it by action. We also have our own Elohim. We want to give it some strength so it can lead and guide us. Come and behold, our sages say. All the clouds of glory that traveled in the wilderness covered the children of Israel alone. But the mixed multitude, along with the animals, remained outside the camp. Now here's another miracle for you. Those 40 years that Israel were in the wilderness, there was no dirt or even dust in the places where the clouds were, and the clouds were covering them. How could there be no dust or dirt in the desert? What? Therefore, the sheep and the cattle that ate grass, where you need dirt for grass to grow, were outside the camp along with the rest of them. Now, Rabbi Elazar asks if they ate the manna from heaven. God rained down manna from heaven. The answer is that they did, but only when it was given to them by the children of Israel, only after they themselves ate. In other words, they were eating leftovers. They were eating scraps. And why is this? The mixed multitude could not even see if it was not given by Israel. Their way to God was through Israel. It was like that back then, and it is like that today. Exodus 16:35, and the children of Israel ate the manna for 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate the manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. It does not say the people or the mixed multitude, but only the children of Israel. Now, before we continue, you might be feeling a bit uncomfortable at this point. You may be like, oh, that's not very nice. Oh, well, I'm checking in with you guys, and you guys should, do a checkup yourselves to make sure that your feelings, to see if they're justified or not. Moses interceded for these people because he hoped that they would leave their idolatry and convert. We see this happening with Jethro. Jethro left his idolatry completely, and he became part of Israel. And he's the one that helped establish the seed of Moses, which we have until this very day. Jethro, you leave idolatry, you recognize the God of Israel, you're in. You follow the law, you're in. That's it. Now, Moses interceded for them, right? He was hoping they would convert, especially if they saw all these incredible miracles day in and day out, which they had every single day. Any of them at any point in time could have come in and become part of Israel, but they chose to tag along. Not for God's sake, but because Israel was the winning team. They didn't want to change, they just wanted to reap the benefits. That's it. Nevertheless, while they pretended, listen to what I'm saying, people. They pretended to be part of Israel. They never had any intention of becoming one with the people. They hated Israel. They hated God. They hated Moses. But they did their best to deceive, and deceive they did. Now, do we have a little bit of a better perspective on things back then and today? Okay, let's continue. And they said, either we are all one nation, and we will be included among you, Israel, without changing, meaning you accept us as we are with all our idolatry, which God clearly stated that as a no-no. Or let us have someone who will go before us, just as your Elohim goes before you. Now Aaron, who was to be the high priest, who had an understanding of this through Ruach HaKodesh, he steps in, and it would seem like he is participating in such a despicable act. And again, we can ask, how could this possibly be? How could it be that this great tzaddik, Aaron, the high priest who interceded every single year for the children of Israel until his death, once a year on Yom Kippur, who had such tremendous power, one of the three highest Nevi'im, Aaron, Miriam, and Moses. How could this be that he would not have preferred to give his life for the Lord's namesake than to build a golden idol just as he knew was prohibited by God? How could this be? Was he afraid for his life? I mean, I'm sure he was. They just killed his nephew, Hor, right in front of him. But was that why he moved forward? No, that was not. He said, heaven forbid, I really hope you guys can hear what I'm saying. Heaven forbid that they should become part of the holy people, that all would be united as one. They should not even mingle with them. It is better to keep a separation until Moses returns. Although Aaron's intentions were good and were pure, many of the holy people ended up joining with the mixed multitudes, be it in their actions or even in their hearts. So just because they don't go do it, like, there's something here, I'm going to listen, I'm going to look. Somehow I'll give an opening to enter. That's why when Moses returned, he had to purify everybody. The whole people sinned, even though it was not the whole people, but we'll see. Because of a little leaven. So what does Aaron do? He tries to stall. He says, remove the golden earrings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. He knows how difficult it is for a woman to part with her jewelry. You see, ladies, don't feel bad. It's always been this way. So Aaron figured he could buy some time with this, because he knew, like, no. But our sages say that we see that as a result of what they did immediately after, they were not proper converts anyway. Just because you say something out loud, just because you dress like one of us, just because you live among us, don't make you one of us. And all the people stripped themselves of the golden earrings that were on their ears and brought them to Aaron. They ripped the earrings out of their own ears, drawing blood, breaking the bond of master and servant. There was a complete separation here, and this shows their true colors. And so then it says, verse 4, he took them from their hands, fashioned it with an engraving tool. Aaron did not protect himself at this point. He had the right intentions, the best intentions. He had the right heart. He belonged on the right side, the light side. And yet, these two wise men, Jannes and Jambres, they came at him and they managed to even deceive him. While one was dealing with Aaron, the other one was performing incantations and doing his magic behind his back. Then they separated the gold and they handed it to him in a very specific way, which I will not share with you here. You don't need to know this. Rabbi Shimon was weeping when he taught of this, and he said, "Oh, holy, pious Aaron, the anointed of the holy El," he was anointed by God. "How many of the people of the holy nation fell in your piety, and you did not know how to protect yourself? You see, the reason they tore the earrings off their own ears was because the sun had reached the desired spot in the sky. And there are a few other things that one considers while performing magic, very specifically this type of magic. Again, this is not something that will be discussed here. Now, as far as the language goes regarding the breaking off of or the tearing off, vait parku literally means to break apart. Lefarek is to break apart. He continues to weep and said, and he brought verse Exodus 21:6. But we're also going to bring verses 5 for context. We just mentioned this before about the master and servant. But if the slave says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go free. My master, God, my wife, the Torah, and my children, the mitzvot, I will not go free. His master shall bring him to the judges, and he shall bring him to the door, or a doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear with an awl, whatever, and he shall receive him forever. This is what happened, and they broke that off. So we spoke of breaking the bond between master and servant, or master and slave. God said in Leviticus 25:55, for the children of Israel are servants to me. Ki li bnei Israel avadim, they are my slaves, they are my servants, whom I took out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. This is the relationship. They chose to bind themselves to me by ear, and that's why this is so significant. And yet the children of Israel threw off from themselves the yoke of the kingdom of heaven and sold themselves to another. Their ears should be pierced. And yet these wicked, evil people, in their desire to return to their evil ways, did not request the jewelry from their wives and children, but rather tore them from their own ears. They damaged the very ears that heard God speak, thereby declaring that they are no longer part of the holy nation, and they have no portion of the kingdom of heaven. Done. Now, when it's said that Aaron received the gold at their hand, Yanis and Yambres, the moment this happened, a voice came forth and said, from the hand to hand, the evil will not be cleansed, but the seed of the righteous escapes. Yad leyad lo yenakera v'zera tzadikim nimlat. This is from Proverbs 11:21. You see, we know, or rather it is known, that if someone hands something to you, that person, if that person is evil or if that person is impure, tamir, then that impurity passes to the person who receives it. It does not travel through the object itself. The objects have no power. It's the power that we give the objects, okay? This is with all things. For instance, while the wife is on her menstrual cycle, she is considered tameh. She's considered impure. It's the blood thing. The law absolutely forbids contact between husband and wife in any way, shape, or form. There are no hugs, there are no high fives, and there is no handing things to one another. The object, let's say, if a husband sits by having dinner with his wife by the table, honey, could you pass the salt? She's not allowed to hand it to him. She has to place it on the table and he will then pick it up, or vice versa. This would be the same thing with Aaron, who would have told them to place it on the ground. If they would have placed it on the ground, it would have lost its power. He didn't know this, but they knew this. They used him as a conduit, those bastards. And look what they did. They drew from his strength and corrupted that which was holy. This happens all the time. Now, where do you think they would learn how to do all this stuff? Yanis and Yambres were the sons of Balaam. Yeah, that guy. And I'll do you one better. Oh, this I just learned recently. They were the grandsons of Laban. Oh yeah. Lavan, Balaam, Yanis, and Yambres. Look at that. Do we recall how in Parashat Vayetze, I called it Stairway to Heaven, Highway to Hell, we discussed ever so briefly that Lavan was an even greater magician than Balaam? Now I understand why. He was his father. He taught it to him. Lavan tried to kill Yaakov. Balaam tried to kill Moses. And Yanis and Yambres just tried to, take all Israel down. But then the word says that Vayatzer oto becheret. He fashioned it with an engraving tool. The engraving tool of magic is not like what you might think. He didn't take out like a chisel and start, chiseling away. It's when it comes to these very specific things. What actually happened was that he then took the gold and he placed it in a bag and he concealed it. At that point, it was already too late. Again, there's a whole ritual that everything has to be done at the right place, in the right time of day, and so on and so forth, with the specific incantations. And yeah, that's how magic works. You see, this world has specific times, specific windows, specific places. When to release specific things, when to pray for other things, when to be careful of things, and so on. Right now is the month of Adar. Now is the time to find the happiness and rejoice. That's why God is so adamant about his times, about his feasts, about his calendar. They are to separate us from them, from the rest of the nations. And them also being these dudes right here who have their own times and their own clock, bent on corruption and destruction. So this process had to be done during a very specific time, in a very specific way, all the while very specific incantations needed to be said. Now, how do our sages know about this? All this stuff that I just told you, you're like, okay, those are some nice fables, Tamir. Where did these crazy rabbis make this stuff up? Well, I'll tell you, they didn't. You see, it's actually in the book of Enoch. While Enosh was the human cause for teaching man how to use said tools, these engraving tools, he led the world astray. But he wasn't the source of all this, now was he? Go to Numbers 13:33. You can check this out for yourself. There we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, descendants from the Nephilim. In our eyes we seem like grasshoppers, and so we were in their eyes. Now, in Judaism, people think that like giants and fallen angels, these are things that, no, it's a Christian thing. But it's not a Christian thing. It's actually a thing. Rashi, which is, again, every child in school, I grew up where I had a Tanakh with Rashi. Everybody has this. Rashi says, for Numbers 13:33, Hanephilim literally translates to the fallen ones. These were Anakim, who were descendants of Sham, Chazai, and Azael, who fell from heaven in the generations of Enosh. They taught him, he taught mankind, and slowly the earth began to eat itself. Tools of war, face paint, for the women around the eyes, very specifically also what they used to do in Egypt. You see, there's a point of origin to everything. But I will say this, if you're going to read the book of Enoch, just be prepared. This is a warning. Okay. There are things that'll absolutely terrify you. This is not for everyone. That's probably another reason why it's not placed within the 24 books of the Bible. It's extra biblical text. Nevertheless, it is legit. But don't do it. Do not. No. Don't eat from that tree. You're going to do it, aren't you? Yeah, you're going to do it. Don't ask me questions about it. You've been warned. I'm telling you right now. I don't want to talk about it. Moving swiftly along. So the engraving tool, or the method that was used here by those two clowns, we'll call them clowns, we'll be kind and call them clowns, was used by Enosh from way back then. The same thing that was from then, way back then. He was the third generation from Adam. It was Adam, Seth, Enosh. You see, this magic, in order for it to be revealed, it first had to be concealed, which is the opposite of God in his Torah, which is first revealed, God's presence, Mount Sinai. Again, God does things with witnesses. It ain't a couple of people in a room saying, hey, where are the witnesses? You had over 2 million people, Jews alone, Israel, for all of you, who got the short fuse, who witnessed it, including the rest of the nations. They witnessed that Israel received the Torah. Okay? So you don't only have one nation, you had all the nations, all the earth. And again, the fact that we're back here is still a testament. God does things revealed. Then what happens afterwards? He conceals them. Specifically like now, the time of Esther, it is concealed only for it to be revealed once again at the end of days, which is the opposite of the dark side. He took them from their hands and he fashioned it with an engraving tool and made it into a molten calf, upon which they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who have brought you up from the land of Egypt." The gold was thrown into the fire and a golden calf appeared out of the fire. Now let's discuss briefly why they said, because Aaron said nothing. These are your gods, O Israel. Okay, why they said that? This is in plural, even though it was one idol. It was one golden calf. These are your gods. All that are created must have a male and female element. Everything. This is part of creation. Now, there are certain elements that I'm going to be skipping over because you don't need to know them. So while they, we'll just explain the aftermath. While they handed the gold to Aaron, each was saying a different incantation. One invoking a male spirit, while the other was invoking the female spirit. Because if you want to birth something, this is how it is. God created them, male and female, right? And these were an ox, which I will not get into why, and a donkey. An ox and a donkey. These are your gods. But wait, I thought it was a calf. Hold on. Ezekiel 23:20 says, and she lusted for their concubinage, those whose flesh is the flesh of a donkey and whose issue is the issue of horses. Those whose flesh is flesh of a donkey, those are the Egyptian magicians. That's the reference. You could read it in context in Ezekiel 23, verse 20. So read those verses, you'll get it. Okay, so those are the magicians. So they combined with the magicians, the magic, and with the ox. So they fused an ox and a donkey, male and female spirits, and a golden calf began to form in the fire. All the while, poor Aaron is watching this, horrified, mortified. He had to act quickly, but his knowledge at that point was very limited. He did not know how to combat this. What did they do? Again, they were given the 10 Commandments. He knew exactly what not to do. This is what they were not doing. But what was the one thing that they had done as a nation up until that point? That invoked God, that showed God's holiness. His stalling tactic, it didn't work. He was outsmarted and outwitted by two masters of the dark arts. So he did the only thing that he knew how to do. As he was seeing the image emerge from the fire, when Aaron saw this, the image emerge, he built an altar in front of it. Now this act that Aaron just did, just now, it actually saved the entire world from becoming undone and being completely destroyed. So what was this that Aaron saw? He saw the dark side becoming stronger. Again, in idolatry, you build something tangible and you give it your power. Look at the, religions of the world today. They actually build idols of wood, of silver and gold, and they give it their power. We have power as people because we have the divine spark. We have a neshama. If we give our neshama to that, we give it all the power, even if they're inanimate objects. And so he saw it becoming stronger. And so the altar he built in front of it was not for it. It was for God. And when the dark side saw the sign of the kingdom of God, which is Malchut, which is the secret of the altar, which is kingdom on this world, it immediately began to lose its power. Now, it doesn't say this anywhere, but it's just a thought, okay? Perhaps the calf was only in the beginning stages. Since they used the male and female energy, essentially to give birth, it would only make sense that it would begin as a calf and then grow to a full-blown ox, right? Thereby maximizing its power, and this world would have ceased to be. But when Aaron built the altar, it may have just stayed in that current state and could not grow anymore. That's why calf and not cow or not ox. Also, another thought I had on the matter, because when I read the thing about the ox and the donkey, Deuteronomy 22:10 says, "You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together." This is also a very famous Gemara about why not to do it. They explain it in the Talmud. The reason for this is that you should have mercy on both animals, that one should not have to drag the other and do double the work, while the other should not be humiliated and dragged by the greater one, the ox and the donkey. Or in other words, on a deeper level, you should not be spiritually unequally yoked. But perhaps these two specific animals, who happen to be, plowing animals as well, although we could also use horses, the reason they were mentioned maybe was because of this unholy spiritual union at this place right here. Again, this is just a thought. The sages do not say this. Maybe they do, but I haven't found it. They probably do. There's nothing new under the sun. I'm not taking credit for anything. Okay, when Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of it, and Aaron proclaimed and said, "Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord." What Aaron was proclaiming, or rather where he was proclaiming it to, was to the right side, the light side, to counter the growing darkness, which again is what stopped it in its tracks and thereby kept the world from complete annihilation. Now, even though Aaron, in all his innocence, with the purest intentions of his heart, did what he thought best in that situation. Now again, Aaron had Ruach HaKodesh that he was going to be high priest, and he thought, wait a minute, if I'm gone, there will be no high priest to atone for this sin that is coming through to Israel right now. So again, a lot of things were playing here. Nevertheless, all this, he still acted as a catalyst, even unbeknownst to him, and he partook in that sin. And as we know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, which is why I keep telling y'all that you owe it to yourselves not to rely on what people say alone, but gather all the information and pray that you are on the right path, not only about halacha, not only about how to live, but about what people say to other people. This is a prime example. Because when you have to stand before God at the end of days, you excuse what you did by saying, well, my fake rabbi, my pastor, my priest told me to do it. That's not going to absolve you from sin. You have eyes, you have ears, you have a heart, you have a brain. Use it. And what was Aaron's punishment? Because again, a price had to be paid. Because he let these two deceive him through avodah zarah, idolatry, which is literally, avodah zarah is literally translated to foreign work or strange work. He would later lose both his sons Nadav and Avihu, who brought foreign fire or strange fire. We're going to read that in Parashat Shemini. Because underneath, though, again, it was a punishment, but it was on them, but it was, he didn't want to lose his kids anyway. Underneath, their hearts were also swayed ever so slightly by these events that took place. That's why they did what they did when they did it. We'll get to that at that point in time. Or you could probably listen to last year's teaching. Anyway, now when Aaron said tomorrow, as in there is a feast for the Lord tomorrow, was in order to delay because he knew Moses was to return by then. And common sense dictates that if the altar that he built was not holy and not for God, Moses would have destroyed it as well, right? As we are commanded to do that. You cannot build an altar to God. Are you out of your mind? Ever since there was Beit HaMikdash in the temple, that is the only place that there could be an altar. That's it. And now we don't have Beit HaMikdash. We don't build altars. Only at that point. Now the Sanhedrin are given some sort of permissions, but again, that's the seat of Moses. I'm not messing with that. You do not build altars to God. That is idolatry 101. 5 books. And when he cried out, he actually cried out with a painful proclamation that was given to him through Ruach HaKodesh. Vaikra Aharon vayomer chag la'Adonai machar. And Aaron proclaimed, cried and said, tomorrow shall be a festival for the Lord. Now this chag, or chaga in Aramaic, means to execute judgment, meaning tomorrow God is going to judge each and every one of you, and me too. He knew it. And that's exactly what happened. 3 types of judgments took place. 1, God plagued the people. 2, the sons of Levi killed the people. And 3, the people drank the gold dust and were found dead in the morning. They went through excruciating pain all night, found bloated and dead in the morning. Now I don't even have enough time to get into great detail over here, but this next part where God told Moses of what went down, he was strongly hinting to him exactly what was going on in the spiritual properties of the physical actions being done. And Moses, being Moses, knew exactly what to say and invoke in order to counter that. Which is when we read verse 9, 10, and 11. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people. That's like the first hint. Adonai el Moshe ra'iti et ha'am hazeh. Your dad ever get, mad at you and he tells your mom, go deal with your son? I love you, Dad. I know. Anyway, yeah. So I have seen this people, and behold, they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone. God is saying this to Moses, leave me alone, and my anger will be kindled against them, so that I will annihilate them, and I will make you into a great nation. Moses pleaded before the Lord, his God, and said, O Lord, why, O Lord, should your anger be kindled against your people, whom you have brought up from the land of Egypt with great power and with a strong hand? Why should the Egyptians say, like after everything you've done, why should they say he brought them out with evil intent to kill them in the mountains and to annihilate them from upon the face of the earth? Retreat from the heat of your anger and reconsider the evil intended for your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your very self, and to whom you said, I will multiply your seed like the stars of the heavens, and all this land which I said that I would give to your seed, they shall keep. They shall keep it as their possession forever. The Lord then reconsidered the evil he had said he would do to his people. They are now his people once again. Now leave me alone. Have you ever been in a brawl? There's always this guy, the big guy, right? The strongest guy who doesn't want to fight because if he does, he's more afraid of what he might do to the people he's fighting with because he knows his own strength. It seems to me here like God is telling Moses, get off of me, man. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to take him out. But what he really means, and again, those with strength, they don't want to show it. They're terrified to unleash their strength onto others. It's the little ones that meme. What God really means here, according to my understanding, is hold me back so I don't kill every last one of them. We've been, hold me back, hold me back, hold me back. You got to hold them back. Pleaded judgment with mercy, because this was God's judgment coming out. Moses invoked God's mercy. He said the right exact things in the Hebrew. Judgment is judgment. It has its functions, and it can only be soothed by mercy to balance it out. Only God can do perfect judgment with perfect mercy at the same time. And Moses used the same godly source to counterbalance that judgment. It is said that while the children of Israel were being spoken to by God, when they received the 10 Commandments a few weeks ago, they were likened to Adam in the Garden of Eden, where there was no separation from God. Come and behold, our sages say. Before Adam sinned, he ascended and stood in the wisdom of the supernal light and was not separated from the tree of life. But when his desire to know good and evil and to descend grew stronger, he was attracted or lusted after, as we saw Eve. He was lusting after the dark side, the other side, the sitra achra. This is idolatry. Then he separated from the tree of life. He knew evil and he abandoned good. David wrote in Psalms 5:5, "For you are not a God who desires wickedness. Evil does not abide with you. Ki lo el chafetz resha ata, lo yegurcha ra." One who is drawn after evil cannot reside in the tree of life, ultimately. Tree of life, to us now, this is Torah. And all we can do is hold on to it, hold on to the word, until we become one with it and reside in it in the world to come. So before Adam and Eve sinned, they heard the voice from above. They were walking and talking with God in the garden freely. There was no fear because there was nothing bad. There was no separation. But after they sinned, look what happens. They were not even able to endure the lower voice because they were already in a sinful state. So they didn't get the higher voice that they did before. Even the lower voice they could not endure. Genesis 3:10, and he said, "I heard your voice in the garden and I was afraid." I was afraid. What happened all of a sudden? Similarly, before the children of Israel had sinned, at the time they stood at Mount Sinai, the filth of the serpent was removed from them, because we all carry it because we're in this world. It was removed from them because the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, which is like it's a poison inside us, was made void in the world at that time. Only in the merit of the people of Israel. It's all done through Israel. Never forget that. Israel pushed it away from them. They were united again with the tree of life and ascended to the highest heights one can ascend in this world. It said that even the lowest of the servants was on a higher level of prophecy than Ezekiel the prophet. That's what happened there on Mount Sinai. That's when they were able to see that which cannot be seen by mortal man. Their very eyes were shining like the sun from what they have seen. All of their eyes were shining. They were marveling in the glory and the splendor of God. While the mixed multitude may have only seen a crazy rumble in the sky with fire and lightning, an impressive sight nonetheless, but they could not hear the voice nor comprehend its magnitude. Only Israel. The Holy One girded them with belts made of the letters of the holy name, so that the serpent would not be able to have power over them and defile them as before. And when they sinned, all these were removed from them. Even when a few sinned, it was removed from everybody, even those who did not sin. They were counted among those who sinned because all of Israel are one. Do you understand now what kind of battle we're fighting here? Do you? In this day and age, I mean, every last one of you is important. We're fighting for our lives, for our souls here. And just like Adam was afraid of the voice, so too were Israel when Moses came down from the mountain, 34:30. Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, and behold, the skin of his face had become radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. They were even afraid to look upon Moses, not God, Moses. How much more so would they be ashamed to raise their eyes to God, because they were like Moses, not anymore. The shame they must have felt then, just like Adam and Eve. They all shone their faces and their eyes just like Moses did, but they threw it away for something tangible. Because the vocal minority can corrupt the silent majority. This is true for this day and age as well. Does not a little leaven leaven the whole lump? Cannot even a small lie corrupt a whole truth? Human nature needs something tangible. That's human nature. That's the flesh. But we were called to rise above that. We were called to be better than that. God said, remember, you have not seen anything. Although you have seen, it's not with these eyes that you see. That's why we see Gentiles wearing talises and kippas and masquerading as Jews. They dance around, they walk around with shofars and with menorahs. Why? Who does that? No Jew does that. They think that makes them part of the holy people, but it does not. Because when the times get tough, and they are gonna get tough, we know this people. They have. Where were you? When the time gets tough again, those masquerading as Jews, they're going to turn back to their idolatry. That which they know, that which they never let go of in their heart. That which the Jewish people have been painstakingly separated from for thousands of years. There are many among us whose hearts are not pure, who bring in the filth of idolatry with them, corrupting our people from within, just like a virus that spreads uncontrollably. And the only remedy for that is to be purged in the fire, every last one. But the same fire that will burn the wicked will heal the righteous. Malachi chapter 3. And you shall return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him who serves God and him who has not served him. For lo, the sun comes. Yes, I said sun in the sky, okay, relax. Glowing like a furnace, and all the audacious sinners and all the perpetrators of wickedness will be stubble. And the sun that comes shall burn them up, so that it will leave them neither root nor branch, says the Lord of hosts. And the Son of Mercy shall arise, with healing in its wings. For you who fear my name, then will you go forth and be fat as fatted calves. So now, it's the responsibility of each and every one of us to look into the mirror of our souls and to know who we are and where we stand. Forget about the whole world for a moment. Forget everything, forget everyone, just for a moment. Get before God without pride, anger, self-pity, and become to him a child. Approach him as a child approaches his loving Father. Either you are a Jew or you are not. Either you are of Israel or you are not. Either you carry a stain of idolatry with you or not. No one said you cannot be one or the other. If you are not a Jew, again, it's okay. But you must for yourself know where you stand so you can make the proper corrections. Do not fool yourself. Because if you carry the stain of idolatry with you, you might not even be aware that you are a carrier of this virus, but it is still on your own head, the blood of Israel that will be spilled because of your carelessness. And there will be a reckoning, as we see in the world today. I told you it's time for a shaking. That's why I switched gears. You gotta love the timing of it too, right? I wonder what he knows. I needed to see who is for real and who is not. About 60% of you remain, and I'm expecting more to drop off. But those that remain at the end, they are here for the right reasons, and those are the souls that I can work with. These are the souls that I would have the honor and privilege to work with, because we want the same thing and we understand that which we need to do. There can only be one way, just one way to do it. No man understood this way better than Moshe Rabbeinu. Even when God told him of what Israel were doing on the mountain, go, yeah, look what they're doing. He still, first of all, he interceded for them. He said, forgive them. But he still carried the tablets to them. Why? Because he knew the law of God. He knew the very same law that God was teaching him. You must never judge a person without evidence or based on hearsay, even if God himself says so. What Moses didn't believe what God said, he trusted his word. Do you understand? And it was only when he saw for himself that he took action. But he did nothing before seeing for himself. He stood up for, no. Maybe slow your roll a second. Let me go see. See, unfortunately, I know this from firsthand experience, what it's like to be on the receiving end of that evil speech, of those lies. I know what it's like to be judged by an entire community, except a few who knew the word of God and did not listen to him who spoke these lies and falsities. They were quickly and silently cast out as I was made a public spectacle. To all those of you who were deceived, I forgive you, but I urge you to get clean with your Father, because the time is near. And all those who deceive, this is one of the most difficult challenges that I've had to face in my life. And I forgive you too. And so I urge you, go get right with God. Go take a good, long, hard look in the mirror, because what you bring upon your head and the heads of those who follow you is a separation from the tree of life. Not only with false testimonies, but with idolatry as well. You cannot mix lies with truths. That doesn't work. You have built a golden calf of your own image and deceive yourselves and others. That is your Elohim. So behold, it is. I separate myself from you. I wash my hands clean of you. I cut all soul ties from you. And may God have mercy on your souls. We no longer exist on the same plane. We all have our challenges. I'm sure you can all relate. I bring this matter up now, the things that I'm saying to you, as the final string of the rope that has been severed. This matter is over. This is finished. Lastly, this episode of the golden calf that we've learned here today really does expose the matters of the heart. And so we see it in chapter 32, Lamed Bet, which is also Lev, heart, because this is the matter of the heart. And before we conclude, because I know that this is a very serious topic, I say rejoice. Because we know who our Father is. At least I hope I do. And he says that this time of year, Purim is actually the holiest day of the year. Even Yom Kippurim is called Yom Ke-Purim, a day like Purim. Never had there been a day in the history of the Jewish people that on one single day it was decreed in heaven and on earth for us to be wiped out, all in one single day. Not the Egyptians, not the Babylonians, not the Greeks, nobody, not the Romans. One single day. This was the worst decree ever that we faced. All the Jews in the whole world were living in Ahasuerus' kingdom at the time. There was nowhere to go. The entire known world at that time was his. All the Jews were there. That could have been made possible. And when a decree was sent out to kill every physical and spiritual aspect of our being and wipe out our memory off the face of the earth, to be stricken from the books, right? In the same day, the opposite was done to our oppressors. But you see, God played a trick on the devil here, the devil within. It was because Mordecai the Jew refused to bend the knee to Haman, Amalek, Edom, that the decree had gone out to begin with. But it was because that very same act that we were given the merit to be saved. The tree that was prepared for us by our enemies is the same tree that they themselves will swing from. Now, if you will excuse me, I got a costume to get into. So I'll wish you all a very happy and very joyous Purim. Go nuts, kids. Really. Go nuts. These are happy times. And so I will wish you all a wonderful rest of the week and a Shabbat Shalom. See you next time. Bye.